Responding to student writing is one of the most crucial responsibilities of being an instructor. Many faculty are concerned about the amount of time that providing comments will take, or are unsure as to which aspect of the writing to focus on and how best to draw a student's attention to problems. While writing comments on student papers does require more time than simply giving the piece a grade, the larger purpose behind making these comments is to improve students' writing skills for future projects. Here are a few approaches that may help instructors to provide more productive feedback while simultaneously saving time. When giving students a new topic, ask them to initially write as if speaking to someone they know well. By assuming that their reader is a close friend who knows nothing about the topic at hand, students can practice translating more specialized language into something easy to understand. Practicing with informal language may discourage students from contorting their language in order to sound more impressive to professors, which can lead to writing that is awkward or stilted. In this image, the student was encouraged to write a first conversational draft, imagining that his audience was a peer. He was able to produce more writing and then revise for a more academic audience in his subsequent draft. Part of facilitating better student writing is a willingness to encourage student voice. Keep in mind that language is always fluid. While an instructor may personally dislike some of the wording students choose, this does not mean that their usage is wrong. An instructor ought to consider what they would like the student to ultimately take away. Overcorrecting may lead to less experimental writing in the future and detract from a student's right to his or her own voice. In this comment, the faculty member affirmed the student's choice of words, even though they weren't quite perfect. The student had already taken a substantial risk with the content of the paper, and his choice of words reflected his thinking process and his best effort. Rather than highlighting every error in a paper, especially mechanical errors, read the paper through once and then comment on one or two of the most frequently repeated errors. Research shows that correcting students' mechanics at the sentence level does not teach them to recognize and fix the mistakes themselves. By demonstrating the problem and labeling it elsewhere, students can better understand why the error was marked. For example, saying, "I see that you have some issues in this draft with verb and subject agreements," instead of noting every instance of that particular error. A paper with too many corrections can cause students to have trouble identifying the more global, argumentative, or content issues in their writing. Here, the faculty member has provided global comments to the student about his tendency to write informally for an academic audience. Rather than going through the paper and correcting every instance in the student's writing where this occurred, the faculty member saved herself time and saved the student frustration by pointing it out as an overall comment. Allowing students to share their work with each other in the interest of peer critique is an excellent way to provide them with an initial, more low-stakes audience for their work. Ask students to bring in drafts of their work to class, pass each paper to the left, and have the new reader note any issues they come across. Additionally, try appointing editing doctors early in each class. Select pairs of students to become experts on a certain aspect of writing, such as subject-verb agreement or CSE citation, for example. Student authors can then consult with these experts during peer revision. Based on the comments students receive from their peers, have them revise their paper before the next class. This faculty member used an online discussion board and had the students create their own rules for peer review. In doing so, students had more agency about the sorts of feedback that they gave and received. Sometimes students can better identify errors on their own once they have put space between themselves and their writing. Try collecting student papers on the due date, but do nothing with them. In another week, when students have had time away from their work, pass the papers out again for a final in-class proofread and edit. Ask for revisions before the next class period. In this example, the student submitted an essay in late September, received a grade, worked on other writing assignments, and then returned to the paper to make revisions at the end of October. In taking the time that she needed to refresh her mind, she was able to grow as a writer and identify more of her own errors rather than the faculty member identifying them for her. Highlighting student work is important, both literally and figuratively. Highlighting in a bright color draws students' attention without confusing them with unclear markings. Consider it an alternative to underlining, or writing condensed, confusing notations such as AWK in the margins. Figuratively, highlighting the merits of a student's writing illustrates what the student is already doing well, so that he or she may continue to practice what works. By leaving the strengths of a paper unmarked, students may never learn to identify best practices and may not transfer these strengths to future writing projects. It is equally important to highlight the good in student writing as it is to identify that which can be improved upon. This faculty member highlighted pieces of the paper to which she would then refer in global comments. Rather than notating citation issues or errors, she was able to address those in global comments using that highlighted section as an example. These are just a few tips and tricks. As always, if you have a strategy that works for you and your students, email us at whack@gmu.edu.